Giving more details about their investigation into the deaths of the actor Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa.
Just days after Gene Hackman was laid to rest, a single anonymous email landed in the FBI's inbox, carrying coordinates deep in the New Mexico wilderness. On the surface, it seemed like a bizarre prank. Some misguided individual pointing the Bureau to a rundown property. Yet the moment agents arrived, they realized nothing about this case would be ordinary. The following story unveils a series of events so entangled with secrecy and subterfuge that it challenges the very foundation of Hollywood's glittering legacy. Unbeknownst to the general public, Hackman had spent his final years hidden from the spotlight, choosing isolation rather than the glitz and glamour that once defined him. Nobody could have anticipated how far he went to conceal his last chapter, or how many powerful forces might be implicated in what came next. Today we examine the evidence, confront the rumors, and explore the dark currents that run beneath Hollywood's polished surface. At first glance, the farmhouse on the outskirts of New Mexico looked abandoned. Harsh winds had battered its wooden walls, and the remote land surrounding it seemed almost inhospitable. However, the map coordinates provided to the FBI were precise. It didn't matter that the local roads were made of loose gravel and nearly impassable sand, or that the property itself was unlisted on any public register. Neighbors' whispers. Residents of the nearest town, if you could even call it that, had plenty to say once the FBI started asking questions. One local mechanic, a grizzled man with a perpetual scowl, recalled spotting an old SUV wandering toward the property a few times each year. He noticed the driver's face only once, and recognized it instantly. "If that was Gene Hackman," he murmured to an agent, "he sure didn't look like the star I remembered. He looked haunted." Another local, known for her uneasy nights, mentioned hearing loud blasts echoing from that direction. Not gunfire, not fireworks, but something deeper, almost subterranean. Then there were the rumors of strange lights at odd hours, flashes so bright they could be seen from miles away, followed by long stretches of silence. Secretive purchase. In the town records, what little existed, the property had been sold under a shell corporation back in 2005, a year after Hackman's abrupt retirement. That was curious enough. What made it stranger was the endless paper trail of offshore accounts and phantom transactions the FBI unearthed when they tried piecing together who owned the land before him. There were no public mentions of building permits, no records of utilities, and no sign of any typical day-to-day living expenses. Everything was orchestrated to appear as if the place simply wasn't there. A man on the run, or in hiding. Up to that point, Hackman was revered as a masterful actor, an Oscar winner with a towering presence on screen. Why would he vanish into a remote desert? Why maintain a property that seemed designed to stay invisible? Each question only birthed more. Perhaps he sought an off-grid retreat, or perhaps he was hiding something he considered more valuable than any Hollywood trophy. But that wasn't even the strangest part. When the FBI stepped across the threshold of that decaying old farmhouse, the real puzzle began unraveling. The farmhouse's interior was dusty, cracked, and in terrible disrepair. Furniture looked decades old, as though someone had purchased it secondhand and never bothered to replace it. The windows were boarded from the inside, muting the relentless desert sun. Initially, FBI agents assumed they would find a typical rural hideout, maybe battered steel cabinets with old files or personal journals stacked in a corner. The trapdoor and the steel door. Instead, tucked away beneath a sagging floorboard in a side storage room, agents discovered a hidden hatch. It led down a narrow set of stairs that reeked of stale air. From above, the passage looked too small to house anything of significance, but the deeper they went, the more unsettling it became. 10 meters under the surface, they encountered a thick steel door, at least 20 centimeters of reinforced metal designed to withstand significant force. It was the sort of security you'd expect to see in a high-level government facility, not beneath a crumbling farmhouse. After hours of working to crack the sophisticated lock system, the FBI team finally breached the door. A self-sustaining bunker. On the other side was an extensive bunker complex. Even though the farmhouse above looked like it might collapse in a stiff breeze, this underground structure was top tier. There was a functional generator separate from any external grid, quietly humming away. Rows of silent cameras lined the hallways, each lens pointed at critical sections of the bunker. The entire place was built to be self-sustaining, with heavy air filtration, water reserves, and no apparent link to the outside world except the single entrance. A chilling atmosphere. One of the largest rooms was sealed behind another metal door, though less formidable than the bunker's exterior barrier. Its walls were coated in acoustic insulation so thick that even a muffled whisper would be swallowed by the silence. Standing inside that room, agents reported an overwhelming sense of claustrophobia. The lights were dim, the air felt cold, and every step echoed like a distant memory. What they found in that chamber was more than peculiar. It was an entire archive. Dozens of VHS tapes neatly labeled, along with shelves packed with files and documents. Some tapes were marked with cryptic phrases like Confession 1 or Private Do Not View. Others hinted at well-known Hollywood productions, from The French Connection to No Country for Old Men and beyond. None of it made any sense at first glance. News of the FBI's undercover operation could have remained a well-guarded secret. But in the age of digital leaks, it didn't take long for fragments of those discovered VHS tapes to surface online. The glimpses were enough to spark a media frenzy. Forums buzzed with speculation, and mainstream outlets demanded information about what was really down there. The confession tapes. Among the first clips to leak were those labeled Confession. Grainy footage revealed intimate, off-the-record discussions between Hackman and several of Hollywood's biggest names. Voices of revered A-listers popped up, speaking in hushed tones, their faces partially hidden from view. And in these conversations, they described suspicious cover-ups, shocking misdeeds, and manipulations that allegedly spanned decades. One powerful figure, believed to be an actor with multiple Oscars, could be heard detailing how a significant scandal from the late 1990s had been buried with hush money and behind-the-scenes intimidation. The incomplete nature of the footage left countless questions, but the implication was there. If these tapes were legit, Hackman possessed undeniable evidence that certain Hollywood elites had orchestrated a web of deception for years. The unsettling ritual. Then there was the snippet from a videotape labeled Private Do Not View. It showed a dimly lit room where figures wearing white masks, molded to resemble famous Hollywood faces, moved in a slow, methodical circle. No audio track accompanied the footage, enhancing the eerie quality. People online floated all sorts of theories: a secret society, an elaborate hoax, or some twisted performance art. Regardless of its true purpose, the existence of this recording stirred public paranoia about hidden circles of influence. Could Hackman have been documenting not just the wrongdoing of individuals, but also the existence of clandestine groups pulling strings from behind the curtain? Documents, hush money, and canceled projects? The tapes weren't the only bombshells. Files in the bunker detailed complex financial transactions, large sums shuffled between production companies and unnamed offshore accounts. Investigators found references to canceled film projects that some suspected had been shut down for creative differences. But these documents hinted there might have been more sinister reasons. Perhaps people involved were on the verge of talking, or the content threatened to expose real-life controversies. Every piece of evidence pointed to the same conclusion. Gene Hackman wasn't merely collecting random curios. He'd systematically amassed material that painted Hollywood as a place riddled with moral gray zones, where illusions of glamour masked darker truths. Yet why keep all of this hidden? And why choose that lonely desert farm as his vault? The truth seemed poised to shake the foundations of an entire industry. But Hackman's personal motivations were still unclear. Had he acted alone? Was he blackmailed into gathering intel? Or was he planning a grand end-of-life revelation that never came to fruition? The Conversation. One film stands out more than any other: The Conversation. Hackman plays Harry Call, a surveillance expert tormented by the weight of the secrets he uncovers. He grows increasingly paranoid, even dismantling his own apartment in search of hidden bugs. With the FBI's bunker discovery, some wonder if Hackman identified so deeply with that character because he too bore knowledge too dangerous to share. Retirement and seclusion. After 2004, he practically vanished from the public eye. It was perplexing at the time. An iconic actor at the height of respect, stepping away without a grand farewell. Friends and colleagues were left puzzled. Some chalked it up to his age. Others suspected a private health matter. Nobody suspected he would vanish into the desert to construct a fortress of secrets. In hindsight, it appears he might have felt cornered. Perhaps it was a crisis of conscience. If he'd collected enough evidence to spark the biggest scandal in entertainment history, how could he continue smiling for cameras and attending award shows? Powerful figures go underground. Soon after word leaked that the FBI had seized a trove of controversial material, a wave of high-profile industry departures began. Some directors left for extended vacations in Europe. Certain producers claimed they were exploring international film markets indefinitely. A prominent actress, known to be close to Hackman, abruptly sold her Beverly Hills estate and relocated overseas. These weren't casual moves. They felt more like evasive maneuvers. As the FBI wrapped up its examination of the New Mexico bunker, one last discovery added an almost poetic sting to the entire ordeal. A single handwritten note, tucked beneath a life-size wax figure of Hackman dressed as Harry Call from The Conversation. The note read, "When the truth is wrapped in glory, only death can unmask it." A permanent shadow on Hollywood. No matter what final conclusions are drawn, whether the FBI eventually releases all the evidence or it remains sealed away for national interest reasons, the Gene Hackman bunker saga has already changed how we view Hollywood. It has cast a dark shadow over the industry's most celebrated achievements, forcing audiences everywhere to question how much darkness can be woven into the background of award-winning art. This whole ordeal underscores a haunting truth. Behind the glimmering red carpets and radiant spotlights, a labyrinth of secrets might lie in wait, quietly shaping the stories we see, the stars we admire, and the myths we cherish. Gene Hackman's life, once the embodiment of a respectable Hollywood success story, now stands as a puzzle piece in a grander, more ominous tapestry. No matter which side of the debate you land on, whether you see him as a bold whistleblower, a frightened bystander, or an integral link in a hidden power structure, one fact remains. The bunker and its contents have laid bare an undercurrent that can't be ignored. The path forward. For Hollywood, this could be a moment of reckoning, or another instance of sweeping scandals under the rug. Much hinges on the public's response, the FBI's resolve, and whether the entertainment machine can harness its massive influence to spin a new narrative. But make no mistake, even if every inch of the New Mexico bunker is sealed off and declared classified, this story will persist. It will live on in whispered conversations, in the suspicious eyes of fans who now see more than a simple escapist fantasy when they watch classic films. The seeds of doubt have been planted, and they'll continue growing. Final words. In the end, who was Gene Hackman really? A quiet hero carefully gathering evidence to bring down an empire of corruption? A trapped participant safeguarding himself with the only leverage he had? Or a complex figure caught between loyalty, self-preservation, and a conscience that refused to let him rest?